There is a silence, heavier than any word. It lives inside you. You can feel it in the lump in your throat, the knot in your stomach, the frantic rehearsal of conversations that never happen. This is the weight of an unspoken truth. Our common mistake is believing that a difficult conversation is a battle of words. We think we need the perfect script, the flawless argument. We build our case like a lawyer preparing for trial. And yet, when the moment comes, something hijacks us. The perfect words vanish, and we either explode with a clumsy, reactive anger, or we implode into a resentful silence. It's a war we never seem to win. But what if the entire battle is lost before you even open your mouth? What if the most important question isn't what you will say, but who inside of you is going to say it? Today, guided by the deep psychological wisdom of Carl Jung, we are not here to learn scripts. We are here to build an anchor. Through the practice of what we can call shadow work on our own communication, we will learn to host an inner council, to differentiate the voice of the wounded child from the roar of the reactive shadow, and to finally speak from the quiet, centered ground of your true self. This is not a guide to winning arguments. This is a guide to reclaiming your integrity, a path to finding your voice, not by shouting louder, but by standing on firmer ground. Are you ready to find your ground?
The most difficult conversation is almost never with the other person. It is with the chaotic, terrified, and angry committee that lives inside of you. And that conversation happens in the split second before you open your mouth. This is a truth that very few people ever talk about. We believe we are a single self, a rational CEO sitting in the control room of our mind, making decisions. But when the pressure rises, when the stakes feel high, the CEO is suddenly thrown out of the room, and the conversation is hijacked. In my years of guiding people through their inner landscapes, I have come to recognize the three primary hijackers. See if you recognize them in yourself. The first to rush the stage is often the wounded inner child. This is the young, vulnerable part of you that is terrified of abandonment, of rejection. Its only goal is to not be left alone. When the wounded child is in control, your carefully planned arguments dissolve into a flood of tears. You might find yourself apologizing when you have done nothing wrong. You might find yourself shrinking, your voice getting smaller, until you become completely silent. This part is not trying to speak your truth. It is trying to survive. The second hijacker is the reactive shadow. This is the part of you that holds all the unspoken resentments, all the swallowed no's, all the anger you were taught was bad or unladylike or unprofessional. This is the part that has been waiting for its moment. And when it takes over, the conversation is no longer a dialogue, it is a prosecution. The shadow speaks in the language of blame, of self-righteousness, of rage. It doesn't want to be understood. It wants to win. It wants to punish. And finally, there is the third most subtle hijacker, the defensive persona. This is your professional mask, your competent, I've got it all together self. When the persona takes over, the conversation becomes cold and intellectual. It uses jargon. It condescends. It speaks in a tone of perfect, infuriating reasonableness. It avoids all genuine emotion. The persona is not trying to connect. It is trying to manage the situation and to make sure it comes out looking good. Let me tell you a story about a woman we'll call Emma. Emma is a brilliant project manager known for her competence and her calm demeanor. Her persona is flawless, but she is drowning in work. Her boss keeps adding to her plate, and she knows she needs to set a boundary. For 2 weeks, she prepares. She writes down her talking points on a notepad. Logical, professional. She rehearses in the car. She is ready. She walks into her boss's office, heart pounding, notepad in hand. She begins to speak her truth, and her boss, not unkindly, simply says, "I hear you, Emma, but the team is really counting on you for this one." And in that moment, it happens. The notepad is forgotten. The logic vanishes. A wave of panic washes over her. The voice of the wounded inner child screams, "Don't be difficult. He will be disappointed in you. You will lose your job." And what comes out of Emma's mouth? A quiet apology. "You're right. I'm sorry. I can make it work." She walks out of the office, not just with the same workload, but with a new project added to it, and a profound, soul-crushing feeling of having betrayed herself. This was not a failure of courage. This was not a failure of intelligence. This was a hijacking. Her inner child, terrified of disapproval, took the wheel, and the wise adult part of her, the part that knew the truth, was locked in the trunk. I invite you to pause here with me, just for a moment, and ask yourself with gentle honesty, who is your most frequent hijacker? Is it the terrified child, the raging shadow, or the cool, armored persona? Just notice, without judgment. Simply naming this character is the first step to freeing yourself from its control. You are not broken. You are not weak. You are simply a human being with a complex inner world, a world that was never taught how to hold these powerful energies. We spend our lives trying to control the other person in the conversation, but the real work, the only work that truly matters, is to first create a sense of order and compassion inside our own skin. But what if there was a way to call a meeting of this inner committee, not in the heat of the crisis, but in the quiet of our own preparation? What if we could listen to all these voices beforehand, so that when the moment comes, we can consciously choose the one that speaks for our soul?
So how do we ensure the right person shows up to the conversation? How do we walk into that room as the captain of our own ship and not as a terrified crew? The answer is a radical act of preparation. It is a quiet, personal ritual that is the most important part of any difficult conversation. It is the art of hosting an inner council.
This is not a metaphor. This is a practical, psychological practice that will change everything. Before you ever speak to them, you must first speak with all the parts of you. You must honor the hijackers, because the secret is this: they are not your enemies. They are your protectors. Misguided, perhaps. Outdated, certainly. But they are all trying to keep you safe. And you cannot simply banish them. You must listen to them, and then consciously choose a wiser leader. So here is the practice. Sometime before the conversation, take out a journal and a pen. This is your council chamber. First, you invite the wounded inner child, and you give it a voice. You write down its fears, uncensored. Ask it, "My dear one, what are you most afraid will happen in this conversation?" And then you listen, and you write, "I'm afraid they will get angry. I'm afraid they will leave me. I'm afraid they will think I am a bad person." And when it is done speaking, you do not argue with it. You validate it. You write back, "I hear you. Thank you for trying to protect me. Your fears make sense given what we have been through. I will not let them abandon you." Next, you invite the reactive shadow. You give this angry, resentful part a safe space to rage. You ask it, "What is the uncensored, furious truth you need to say right now?" And you let the pen fly. "I am sick of this. It's not fair. How dare they treat me this way?" You let it all out onto the page. This is a crucial step. You're draining the poison in a safe container so it does not spill into the real conversation. And when it has exhausted itself, you thank it. "Thank you for showing me where my boundaries have been crossed. I see your strength. I will use your fire, but with focus." And finally, you invite your wise adult self. The captain. This is the calm, compassionate, centered part of you that has been waiting quietly in the background. And you ask it the most important questions of all. Given the child's fears, and given the shadow's anger, what is the truest, kindest, and most necessary thing that needs to be said here? And what is my real intention? This is where the magic happens. Your intention shifts. It moves from the childish need, "I need them to like me," or the shadow's demand, "I need them to admit they are wrong," to the adult's clear, sovereign goal. "My intention is to express my truth with integrity and compassion." Or "My intention is to set a boundary that honors my own well-being." Do you feel the shift? The power has moved. It is no longer out there, dependent on their reaction. It is in here, rooted in your own integrity. Let's go back to Emma. The night before her second attempt to talk to her boss, she does this work. She writes out her child's fear of being fired. She writes out her shadow's rage at being taken for granted. And then she asks her wise adult what is true. And the answer comes, clear and calm. "My intention is to collaborate on a sustainable workload so I can continue to do my best work for this company." It is not an attack. It is not an apology. It is a statement of centered professional truth. She walks into the office the next day. Her heart is still beating fast. The child is still scared, but it is no longer in the driver's seat. The wise adult is at the wheel. She speaks her truth calmly and clearly, rooted in her new intention. The conversation is still difficult, but it is not a hijacking. It is a dialogue. And when she walks out of that office, regardless of the outcome, she feels not the shame of self-betrayal, but the quiet, solid dignity of self-respect. This is empowerment. This is self-compassion. It is the profound realization that you can be afraid and still be brave. You can be angry and still be kind. You can hold all of these parts within you and still choose to act from your center. This is the work that Carl Jung pointed to, the work of holding the tension of the opposites, of becoming a conscious container for your own complex humanity. So, what happens once you have found this ground? Once you have this new centered intention, what words do you actually use? How do you translate this inner clarity into a language that can actually be heard?
So you have found your ground. The inner council has met. Your intention is clear. Now for the final act of courage, the speaking itself. When you speak from this centered place, the words themselves become simple, because the goal is no longer to persuade, to impress, or to win. The goal is simply to be understood. There is a simple three-part formula for this. It is a way of speaking that is both soft and unbreakable. It begins with the wise adult taking responsibility for its own perception. Step 1 is the I statement, the view from your window. You do not say you are. You say I feel. You do not say the truth is. You say the story I'm telling myself is. This is not a trick. It is an act of profound honesty. It makes your truth undeniable because it is your truth. Step 2 is to honor the inner child. You name the feeling and you name the need. When this happens, I feel scared because my need for security is not being met. Or, I feel disrespected because my need for partnership is not being met. You are no longer just an angry or a sad person. You are a whole person calmly articulating the needs of your own tender heart. And step 3 is the wise adult's clear and kind request. Not a demand, not an ultimatum, a simple, actionable request. Would you be willing to? You are inviting them into a solution, not backing them into a corner. Let's see how Emma uses this. She walks into the office. Her voice is quiet, but it does not tremble. She says, "When I am given new projects after I've already expressed that my plate is full, the story I tell myself is that my capacity isn't being seen or respected.
And that makes me feel overwhelmed and anxious because my need for a sustainable pace in my work isn't being met. So I would like to make a request. Would you be willing to work with me to prioritize my current projects before we add any new ones to the list? Clean, kind, and utterly solid. But now comes the hardest part of all. What happens when they react? What happens when their own inner child gets scared or their own shadow gets angry? This is where you become the anchor. This is where you learn the master skill of all deep inner work, the art of holding the container. You become the eye of the hurricane. Their emotional storm may rage around you, but you do not have to fly apart with it. How? You practice the sacred pause. When their anger or tears or defensiveness comes at you, you do not react back. You take one conscious breath. In that one breath, you remember your ground. You remember your wise adult. And from that ground, you can offer the gift of reflective listening. What I'm hearing you say is that you feel attacked right now. Is that right? This is not agreement. It is an act of profound compassion that can de-escalate almost any conflict. And as you offer that empathy, you can hold your boundary. I understand this is hard to hear, and I still need us to find a solution for my workload. You can be the tree that bends in the wind without being uprooted. And then the conversation is over, but the work is not. The final act is the integration. Whatever happened in that room, whether they heard you or not, whether they agreed or not, your only job now is an act of profound self-compassion. You must turn to that brave part of you that spoke up, and you must thank it. Because the victory was not in their response. The victory was in your own integrity. You showed up for yourself. You did not betray your own truth. And that is the only victory that the soul ever truly cares about. When you begin to practice this, a new kind of freedom is born. A freedom from the exhausting need for approval. A freedom from the corrosive acid of resentment. You realize that your peace of mind is not a prize to be won from others. It is a state to be cultivated within yourself. You have ended the war with yourself. You are no longer a victim of your own reactions. You are becoming the quiet, centered author of your own life. But sometimes, a difficult conversation does not lead to resolution. Sometimes, it reveals a wound so deep, a breach of trust so profound that a new, even more difficult journey must begin.
And so, we have journeyed together from the chaotic battlefield of reaction to the quiet, solid ground of the self. We have learned to listen to the counsel within, and to speak not from our wounds, but from our wisdom. The great liberation is this. The goal was never to win the argument. It was to end the war within yourself. The difficult conversation is not a test of your power over others, it is a test of your integrity with yourself. Remember Emma. Her victory was not in changing her boss's mind, it was in honoring her own. She walked out of that office, having kept the most important promise of all, the promise to not abandon herself. When you learn to speak from this place, you are no longer a leaky vessel, your energy spilling out in frantic anxiety or hot rage. You become a container, a safe, strong, and sacred space that can hold the truth, your truth, with both courage and compassion. This is the deep work of Carl Jung, the journey of shadow work. It is the alchemy of turning the lead of your fear into the gold of your own voice. It is the understanding that your wounded inner child does not need to be silenced. It needs to be held by a wise and loving adult. And that adult is you. You will still feel fear. Your heart will still pound, but you will have an anchor, a deep, quiet center that knows its own worth, independent of anyone's approval or disapproval. This is a life no longer haunted by the ghosts of unspoken words. It is a life lived in the clear, clean air of authenticity. This is not just a lesson, it is an invitation to a new way of being, a quiet, personal ritual to mark the end of your silence and the beginning of your voice, the act of consciously choosing to honor your truth, to show up for yourself, to come home. If you are willing right now to consciously make this commitment to your own integrity, I invite you to write 6 simple, powerful words in the comments below. I will honor my truth. Let this not be for me or for anyone else. Let this be a declaration to your own soul, an anchor for your new beginning. Let this comment section be a testament, a collective declaration of our courage to live and speak from the deepest, truest part of who we are. And in that quiet declaration, feel the shift, the release of the burden, the return of your own quiet power. But this new courage, this commitment to truth, will inevitably lead us to the most difficult territory of the human heart. It will require us to speak of things that have been broken. What happens when the truth that is spoken is the truth of a deep betrayal? In our next video, we will walk the long, complex, and alchemical journey of what it truly takes to rebuild trust. But for now, simply rest here in the quiet dignity of your own voice. The war is over. You have found your ground.